On this program, we conclude our conversation about the Republic of Rwanda. Our guest on This is America and the World is Mathilde Mukantabana, ambassador from the Republic of Rwanda to the United States. The ambassador also serves as the non-resident ambassador to Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina. In demand as a national speaker on peace, justice, and conflict resolution, the ambassador formerly taught history in Sacramento and is co-founder of the Friends of Rwanda Association. We met at the Embassy of the Republic of Rwanda in Washington. Ambassador, when you look at what's happening in Ukraine today, with your personal and professional background as, when I say professional, I mean trying to bring people together, conflict, peace, negotiation. When you look at Ukraine today, what do you see?
For me, I see devastation. I see people who are dying, and I think putting it on the back of people who are unable to see the human sanctity. You know, we've lost the ability to negotiate for peace. And that's a major failure of our humanity, and especially within the geopolitical system we are in. Of course, out of, even for principle-wise, I think and I feel that each nation should have its own sanctity and to preserve their own boundaries. Even for us, as I was telling you, we have all these problems with the national boundaries, but we have decided that whatever we have inherited, even during colonialism, we maintain. Otherwise, it's opening a whole Pandora box. So the whole continent has accepted to maintain the boundaries because we know what it can provoke.
Do you think it's genocide, what's happening in Ukraine?
Genocide has a very legal definition, and it has all the things leading to it that I can't use the term genocide for what is happening in Ukraine. I'm not saying it's not horrible. People die and there are conflicts killing people everywhere. And we can even start by looking at the armed groups in DRC. So it's not to go too far to see people dying from conflicts, but we can't term them genocide each time. Because the term genocide conjures the target of one group because of their ethnicity, because of many different things, but also the whole planning that goes behind it. There are stages of genocide. So for me, without reaching those stages, I wouldn't call it a genocide. But again, it depends when you are losing your own world. Even one person can say it's like a genocide. They can compare it to anything. But for me, speaking and knowing also the history, I wouldn't call it a genocide.
I was thinking this not indiscriminate, but very directed targeting of civilians. It appears in Russia that it's just to wear the country down, destroy the people's resolve.
And I feel for Ukraine, really, there's whether it's a war, whether it's a genocide, it's destruction of life. It's when you are killing somebody, it's still destroying a life. But when it comes to terming it for what it is, sometimes it's very hard for me. I'm a scholar in genocide and Holocaust, so I'm kind of really...
very careful.
It's very careful on how you use the terms. Not so much, just for the sake of using it, I wouldn't do it. But the only thing that I can say maybe is that humanity doesn't learn anything. There are a number of things when after Rwanda they were saying we have learned from the Holocaust.
Yes.
Laws and covenants were passed in 1946. never again was said. Then Rwanda happened, then Yugoslavia happened, then all the things that we've been talking about happened. The only thing is that more definitions come. Like, for instance, I can give you one example. And Rwanda is in the forefront for this. Like what they call Kigali Amendment is on the peacekeeping part you were talking about. Because if you are going there, you are UN and you are supposed to keep peace, but you are not protecting civilians, then what are you doing? Yeah. There is nothing you are doing. So in the Kigali Amendment, 18 of them, and I'm not going to go that, but it's to direct people on what you do when you are in a conflict zone and you are a peacekeeper. So, and many countries have adopted it, including US, those Kigali amendments to the peacekeeping.
The responsibilities of the peacekeeping.
Yeah, so it's part of the responsibility to protect, but it's even broader. Also, responsibility to protect came out of the Rwanda thing. Rape as a part of genocide came out of Rwanda. Now it's established within genocide. If you have also committed rape, it's part of genocide. It's the weapon. Because we've seen it destroying entire communities. And that was established within the UN. So there are many good things that came out of, or at least certain decisions taken by the international body. But it hasn't really, anything hasn't prevented mass killing of people. We've seen many happening. So that's the thing that I can say about that particular subject.
Let us take a little break, talking with the ambassador who represents Rwanda here in the United States. We're going to learn a little bit more about her background, her biography, her history teaching here in the United States, and what it means to be an ambassador here in Washington. Sit tight, back on the other side. This is America and the World. This is America and the World is made possible by the Japan-America Society of Washington, D.C., 21st Century Citizenship, the Frank Islam and Debbie Dreisman Foundation, the Republic of Uzbekistan, the Sultanate of Oman, the Kingdom of Morocco, the Forerunner Foundation, the Rotendaro Family Trust, and the Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy. Ambassador, when you were young, what did you want to be? Did you know? Did you have an idea?
A nun.
A nun?
I was in a boarding school. My whole family was strongly Catholic.
Yes.
And I always was close to my grandfather who had given his land to the priest. And he lamented the fact that among all his children, he wanted a sister or a priest. So one went to priesthood, but he got out. The other one didn't. So to please my grandfather, I always dreamt of becoming a nun, but obviously I quit. I quit my thing.
Is it a Christian nation or is it a Catholic nation, Rwanda?
The majority of the people were in a Catholic church.
Is that true?
After genocide, for a number of reasons, there are many other churches that have expanded in Rwanda, like the Protestant churches that have been growing. But still, the Catholic Church is the most predominant, even though it was.
And what was it, when you were in elementary school, high school, into college? What led you in the direction of education?
I started with my father was a teacher, and he loved everything about teaching. So I grew up with that also, and loving to tag along when my father was teaching. So I always loved to be in the classroom.
With him teaching?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or being taught by him. So it was either or, but I always felt that was my thing, to teach.
And your mom, what was she up to?
She was just in the house.
Taking care of
our thing, our farms. We grew coffee, we grew bananas, we grew everything. Yeah, so and also taking care of all of us as children. We had a large family.
So are you a kind of what they would call here a foodie? You like to try various food from different countries and such?
Actually, yeah, I try to try everything, but I'm pretty simple in eating. I always go back to the same food. Yeah, I don't like to try too many things.
So what's the basics of Rwanda?
The basic is very brand type of food, like the organic stuff about banana, potatoes, stuff like that. So it's every food you can think about. Here we have it, whether it's in the, we like shish kebab, if you are thinking in terms of meat, about fish, but we like also mostly the Rwandan people like the vegetarian type of mode, beans, cassavas, stuff like that, tropical.
How did you end up as a professor? How did that work out?
It was by accident, not by accident, but I ended up in California because I was following a guy who was teaching at California State, who was Rwandan, who couldn't go back to the country because of the political problems we were mentioning. So he sent for me to come and got a scholarship, went to school, and then eventually ended up teaching in a community college there.
So you're professor of history.
Yes.
What do you make of, from your looking kind of outside in, but inside as well, what do you make of the African-American experience here?
Big, because I thought for the 19 years I was teaching there, I was teaching US with an African-American emphasis. So I focused on African-American, then I introduced also the African civilization course. But I have from the beginning, there was a strong kinship with the African-American here for a number of reasons. One is that really, even when we think in terms of history, US history, you can't talk about the evolution of democracy and the growth without thinking about the centrality of African-American in pushing for more rights. So that is an inspiring story by itself, very inspiring for all of us. But also from a broader Pan-Africanism spirit that was driving for us, especially when you think in terms of a broad Pan-Africanism transcending the national boundaries of Africa. African Americans are part of the African history. They are part of the American history, the African history, meaning that, especially when you look,
interesting.
When you look at the definition, they came in different and various contexts to come here. But whether they come centuries ago, whether they came yesterday, whether I came yesterday, Africa is for them. They came from Africa. And that's why, for instance, especially with the new development and looking at the Agenda 2063 with African Union, there's a very strong appeal to African Americans to also invest on the continent. Because the renaissance of Africa is also calling on the diaspora. It's a diaspora. And the diaspora, as I'm talking about African American, especially in this context, is that they are part of the larger diaspora of Africa. So meaning that really, in a sense, if there's anything, I always, when I was in California, I always appealed to also Black organizations like Black Caucus, National Urban League, all those ones, because I felt there was a certain kinship in terms of their revolution here, but also our revolution on the continent when we were fighting for our independence. So there are many related fields where we could grow from each other, and also telling you that African Americans were part of the independence of Africa, including end of apartheid in South Africa. So there is no way you can really delink. You can't delink African American experience with, of course, it's a little bit, the more you go by centuries, it becomes almost something intentional you need to build and rebuild. But at the same time that communal fellowship that is based on where we came from is still there.
What are we missing about Africa? When you take what you've just been talking about, I call it the African American experience, as opposed to African American history.
Right.
They call it the experience. When you take that and look at Africa, what do you see? What are we missing?
About Africa?
Yeah.
I think that Africa has been misunderstood as a continent. It has been misused.
Yeah.
Until recently. It has been exploited to the ultimate degree, meaning that, but what we are missing right now, I think that people are starting to think in a large measure that Africa, it's almost like a labor of love, but slowly but surely, we are coming to a point where we are going to be really also directing our own destiny. Until recently, we were not. You can imagine, for instance, sometimes people will come and judge how far we are and say, why are you poor? Why are you, this and that? We can't invest in your country because there's corruption. So all those stuff will come towards Africa. But no one goes and sees the damage the colonialism has done to Africa. For instance, 19th century, if I give you a quick example, in the early 20th century, it's when the incredible industrialization was occurring all over the world. That's where the countries were blossoming and becoming what they became. Africa during that time was not leading its own destiny. We couldn't create our own diplomacy. We couldn't sell our own products. All the roads were leading to Europe. There was no industrialization on Africa. By the time we became independent, I can give you an example. In my country, there were 2 graduates. That was in 1962. 2. And those graduates, you know where they graduated from? You guess. Catholic schools. Not even a university degree. We are talking about people who are coming, and it's out of those leadership. The first president was coming out of that class. So you can imagine even what you are setting the African countries to. They are countries that were exploited like all countries in Africa, the majority have incredible minerals, resources. But until today, they haven't been really able to optimize in their exploitation or in their use because they are still taking the same way street. So Africa now, you ask the question, is at that place what they call African continental free trade. That was really promoted by all the Africans together, and I have to say with pride that my president had a lot to do with it because he was in charge of reforming the African Union when he was the president of the African Union in 2018. But those were to set the course of promoting the intra-African trade. Before, like among ourselves, let me tell you, it was more difficult for me to go to Burundi, where you can walk. Actually, I can walk from my country to Burundi on foot. It was more difficult than getting a visa and coming to the United States.
Wow.
We're divided, even on the continent. There was no intra-African trade. That's what we are developing. The protocols have been signed. What used to be aspirational is now operational. And our country is doing its own part. Like, for instance, another example I can give you. To fly to West Africa, you had to go to Europe first and then go back to West Africa, coming from Africa, the same continent.
Right.
Now we have our airline that is going in the different parts of the continent, allowing people to circulate the goods to do that. There's a saying in the country, it's not me who invented it, saying that Rwanda is not a landlocked country. It's a land-linked country. So we've created the covenants and the infrastructure to be able to exchange with the rest of the world. And that part, so you've heard that, for instance, all the African presidents came here to Washington to...
The Biden White House
with the Biden
summit.
administration.
The summit?
It's a good beginning because so far, even in the policy of US, Africa was always trading the other continent. And yet, we had a lot to offer. It's not that Africa doesn't pay its own part. It's because it's unequal the way we pay, right? So it's to be able to, Africa is in that place where we are saying, let's do legitimate trade with the United States. Mm-hmm. Let's do partnership. Let's Africa be on the table when they are discussing the issue that are relevant to Africa. Not to be talked, not to be dictated on how we should deal with our
Seat
lives.
at the table.
Yeah, sit at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things
equals. Yeah.
Among equals. So a few things that came out of the thing, and we are watching, is even to be at the UN Security Council. Mm-hmm. You can't talk about countries like our continent and the importance we have, and not even have one seat at the Security Council. Or the G20, or many other things.
And what a powerful economic bloc
exactly
the countries are together. We are coming down to the end of our time, but I want to ask you two questions. Mm-hmm. What is the relationship between Rwanda and the United States, number one? And what do you see as your mission as ambassador?
I can say, really, in general, our relationship is a very good relationship. It's a mature relationship. Sometimes we disagree on certain things, but there are other things, areas of collaboration that are major between our two countries, especially when it comes to peacekeeping, the health initiatives, mm-hmm. All the things that Rwanda does, and then educational systems that have been put in place. I gave you an example. For instance, on campuses, I talked about Carnegie Mellon, but there's also Kent University that has taken a whole campus also, wow. a program in the country. We have many collaboration. We have incredible people-to-people exchanges between our two countries, and in a way that is really has been growing in many different ways. In climate change and the program that are put together, global health. So, and Rwanda almost has been one of those model of countries where we can work very well together because, again, of what I told you about of the philosophy driving our nation, especially mm-hmm. lack of corruption. Also the resources that are availed by this country or the partnerships that we do always go very well. So those exist. Of course, there are many other areas where we are still pushing, and what I can tell you is that especially United States and Rwanda, the conversation is always ongoing. Uh-huh. We never crossed any boundaries on how far we can discuss on issues, even when they don't go the same way. For instance, one of the things that we are in conversation with is even to understand our type of democracy. Because it's not modeled after the US, because we had to come up with what we call consensual democracy. Because of what we went through. It's about our context, it's about our history, and it's working for us. So those are things, for instance, in terms of conversation, we are still engaging with the people here whenever we have a chance to promote whatever we have.
And your mission as ambassador?
My mission is to continue the dialogue, is to continue to facilitate that kind of dialogue, is to amplify what we are doing in our country, but that can also be relevant to people here. We always believe in equal partnership. We have something to offer, even when and the United States has tons of things to offer. And that's where we need to harmonize our mission, to be able to see what we can draw from this country, but also what we can contribute here. But also we have our population, we have a diaspora that is willing and proud to contribute to their country of origin. We continue to bring investments in our country, promote our tourism that is soaring, and many people from here are going to Rwanda to explore the magnificent thing that our country has to offer. So we are here for all those things.
We are at the end of 3 half-hour programs. Madam Ambassador, you have given us such an education in so many different directions. I'm
Thank you
just
so much.
thrilled to sit with you, and thank you for the education, and thank you and your staff for your hospitality.
Thank you so much, Dennis. It
Thank
was
you.
a pleasure to meet
Thank
you
you.
too, and thank you
Thank
for
you.
what you've done. It was amazing.
I want to share with you some short pieces from interviews that I've done over the years. I call them reflections, and they're filled with inspiration, wisdom, and motivation, and you can find them on the media platform Substack. It's available at denniswholey.substack.com. Enjoy and share. For information about This Is America in the World, visit our YouTube channel, This Is America TV, visit our website, thisisamerica.net, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. This Is America and the World is made possible by the Japan-America Society of Washington, D.C., 21st Century Citizenship, the Frank Islam and Debbie Dreisman Foundation, the Republic of Uzbekistan, the Sultanate of Oman, the Kingdom of Morocco, the Forerunner Foundation, the Rotondaro Family Trust, and the Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy.